Shut up, Murph. Damn dog. Welcome back to the channel. This is Shadow Alley and we talk about horror movies and silicone masks and creepy stuff in general. So if you like that sort of thing, feel free to subscribe and stick around. In the first episode of Bad CGI versus 80s movies, we looked at the digital effects in the movie Van Helsing and compared those effects to the 80s classic, The Monster Squad, which used practical monster effects. I posted that video in a few Facebook groups and I was actually surprised at the amount of people that loved the movie Van Helsing, and even some that thought the CGI was amazing. I think one person even said it was the
best werewolf they had ever seen on film.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I guess there's really no debate. It's a matter of taste and preference. Different people like different things. I also mentioned in that video that I liked the movie Van Helsing. I wasn't trying to hate on it, I just think that it relied way too much on CGI. And the CGI itself didn't look very good to me. So if you haven't seen that video, it's pretty easy to find here on the channel. But in today's video, I want to find an even worse example of bad CGI in movies. And again, it's a movie that I kind of like. It's a movie that I think has a cult following and definitely has its hardcore fans. But unlike the movie Van Helsing, I don't think anyone could argue that the digital creatures look good.
They look pretty ridiculous.
This is Bad CGI versus 80s movies, episode 2. So the movie on the chopping block this time is 1997's Spawn, starring Michael Jai White. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a movie that I kind of like. I've watched it a few times and I remember really enjoying it. It was a superhero origin story before Marvel made them mainstream. It's about an assassin that is double-crossed and murdered, only to be resurrected by the devil as a Hellspawn, tasked with leading Hell's army. Spawn struggles with this new existence and decides to use his powers for good instead of evil. Not only is it an interesting story based on a badass comic book character, but it also has a lot of examples of practical effects that I still think look amazing. The Spawn costume itself is great, and I love John Leguizamo as the Violator. I think he absolutely nailed it. I also think the idea for the effects was perfect. To do the Spawn character practically, and to add to his costume with digital accessories like the chains and the cape. I think if this movie was done the same way today, it would probably look amazing. But in 1997, the technology either wasn't quite there, or it was rushed, or done by an incompetent effects company. Either way, this video isn't about why the CGI looks bad. It's simply poking fun at it and wondering if it takes away from the movie. Now, if you watch this movie for the first time, you might not think the CGI is that bad at first. I think it takes me out of the movie, but I'm guessing that many people might not think that the cape issue is such a big deal. But wait, oh, just wait. The CGI gets progressively worse and worse as the movie goes on, ending on what I think has to be one of the best examples of bad CGI in movies. Probably even worse than the Scorpion King. Yeah, it's that bad. So let's take a look at some of the effects and watch the progression of pretty bad to absolutely movie ruining. I mean, come on, right? Does anyone think that looks good? You can argue that you like the movie. Hell, I like the movie. But that CGI, especially at the end when you're supposed to finish with a bang, looks so bad. I think I'm gonna have a hard time finding other movies for these episodes that can compete with it. I might have hit the high watermark for bad CGI in movies.
Yeah, maybe so.
Please don't be afraid to have your own opinions. I would actually love to know if anyone likes the monster effects in this movie. Does this look good to you in the same way that a terrible practical 80s effect looks good to me? I'm really interested to see if the CGI has any supporters.
You should be down on your knees thanking me for not killing you where you stand.
Speaking of 80s practical effects, let's move on to my favorite part of the episode and compare the movie Spawn and its digital creatures to an 80s movie that did something similar without the use of computer effects. If you're one of the 5 regular viewers of this channel, you might be able to guess my pick already. We need to find an 80s movie that deals with the devil and his dark minions, but does it with only practical effects. So how about the movie Legend from 1985? I feel almost bad talking about this movie. One, because I talk about it in some way in pretty much every one of my videos, but also because it's like putting a heavyweight boxer in the ring with a disabled person. It's probably a bit unfair to compare these two movies. They're actually really different in pretty much every way, but I just want to compare the creatures and decide whether the movie Spawn could have been better had they used effects more similar to the movie Legend. Before we decide, let's take a look at some of the practical effects done in the 1980s classic. Pretty awesome, right? Why couldn't this much time and care have been put into the movie Spawn? If you took Spawn and the Violator and put them in this movie with these practical effects, I think you would have a movie that people would remember and talk about forever. I think the movie Spawn would have elevated from an okay 90s movie to something really special if the effects, especially at the end, were handled differently. I think it's a perfect example of bad CGI in movies that take away from my enjoyment of the film. But what do you think? Is there anyone out there that truly likes the effects in Spawn more than the effects in Legend? Is there anyone that thinks this movie wouldn't have been better with less of an emphasis on digital effects? Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so put them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.